So the creative force of author Michael Crichton and director John McTiernan both melded and clashed on the film adaptation of the book Eaters of the Dead, a film that was dumped out and largely forgotten about by the studio, and now largely forgotten about on physical media. So let's delve into the combative production history of the film that would end up being known as the 13th Warrior. So Michael Crichton published his novel of Eaters of the Dead in March of 1976, melding the tale of Beowulf with the real-life documented accounts of Ahmad ibn Fadlan, a traveler and ambassador who brought Islamic beliefs to many different cultures, and the entire thing was written on a dare, because he had a professor friend who was teaching a class about literary works that were still kind of relevant but were just tedious, that no one really wanted to read anymore. One was Beowulf, that Crichton completely disagreed about. He thought it was a very exciting story and set out on that kind of dare. It's like, okay, let me see if I can take the tale of Beowulf and write it in a way that would make my friend change his entire perspective of the entire thing. And he was working on it, kind of trying to find an angle for it, and it felt like if I could take it from the point of view of an observer, become an interesting type of thing to go on, because there's no known author for Beowulf. And it's also this entire nebulous type of thing of whether or not people believe it was maybe adapted from like real life accounts of something that actually happened way back when. And so it's just this entire sort of vagary about the entire thing. It's like, can I strip it down to a certain degree and kind of peel it back to where it's like, okay, maybe something's got changed in translation or something else like that from one culture to the next, or time kind of destroyed things here and there, so I could kind of primordially kind of peel it back to a certain degree and take it from this perspective of someone from another culture going through and dealing with these Norse men, and have this entire adventure kind of stem out from what we knew about Ibn Fadlan, where he went and stuff like that, and just divert it off to a certain degree and have the entire book, as I went through the audiobook, and I very much recommend it because narrator is absolutely fabulous, the entire thing. It's very interesting. It takes all those little documented accounts that are from Ibn Fadlan's actual manuscripts and transitions everything almost seamlessly into this entire Beowulf-inspired story here, where there's constantly little things like footnotes and author notes and stuff like that, and certain historical things in retrospect from where we are now back to when the story takes place. They kind of have like paleontologists and stuff like that talk about various types of things about the Wendels in the entire story, or the Vendels, depending on which interpretation you look at. And Crichton kind of looking to get this thing off very much into theaters as a movie very much quickly after it got published. And he already gotten a couple things. He directed Westworld. He actually did stuff like Great Train Robbery, Runaway, Looker, stuff like that. And of course, one of his most successful films adapted from his own work that he did not direct would be Jurassic Park. But of course, things really wouldn't go anywhere until about the mid-90s, where Crichton actually didn't write the screenplay. It was written by two separate screenwriters, one of them being Warren Lewis, who actually has very few credits, but one of them is a co-writing credit on Ridley Scott's Black Rain, and the other screenwriter is William Wishart Jr., who'd worked with James Cameron a little bit on The Terminator, but has a co-screenwriting credit on Terminator 2 Judgment Day. So, in my opinion, very strong screenwriters who bring something very valuable to the entire table here, and adapt Crichton's work in a very good type of way, and getting director John McTiernan attached to this thing, who had done Predator, Die Hard, Hunt for October, Die Hard with a Vengeance, stuff like that. Very big films, very profitable films, very well-received films. So it's like he's the top action director at this point in time, wanting to bring in this whole thing, and he read the entire novel, and there are certain things he felt like need a little extra work overall to really get the thing up to standards for a film screenplay. And the story of the 13th Warrior takes place in the 10th century, following Ahmad ibn Fadlan after witnessing a Viking funeral along the Volga River. A messenger from the north invites leader Bolvai's aid in driving a dark evil force from King Hrothgar's kingdom. Now, Ibn Fadlan is ultimately drafted into their quest, as the 13th Warrior must not be a Northman. Ultimately, the Wendel appear frightening and beast-like, but Ibn Fadlan learns, however savage they are indeed men. Knowing that men eat, sleep, and bleed, Bolvai leads his men to the mountain caves to defeat this feared enemy, to save King Hrothgar's weakened and ill-defended kingdom. Now, the reason for the name change from Eaters of the Dead to the 13th Warrior is because Crichton was talking to some people like friends or neighbors or something like that, and it's like, Eaters of the Dead, oh, that sounds like some kind of dark horror movie. I don't want to go see that. That sounds gruesome. Gruesome. I don't want to deal with that. So Crichton said, oh, I got to change the title because this is not going to play with that title. So it just went to much more of a slightly generic sort of adventure action title of the 13th Warrior to kind of tell us much more about Ibn Fadlan's sort of journey through the entire thing instead of just the idea of focusing on the myth and the darkness and the horror of these entire creatures and the entire mountains and stuff like that. And the studio at hand here is Touchstone Pictures, which is a subsidiary of Disney and Buena Vista, and they're much on board with the whole thing, but it was a weird type of thing where they originally kind of greenlit it as a PG-13 film, but wasn't kind of until later on into production where it's like, we've always shot a whole bunch of stuff, and now they're kind of feeling, we should probably go for an R now. Feels like it's going to fit better for an R. We're going to get the right audience for an R, so they had to go back and shoot other things to kind of get more blood here and there, but if McTiernan knew we were going for an R from the beginning, he would have shot a lot of different things in a different type of way. And the combative type of qualities of the production really stem from Crichton and McTiernan here, which had very different opposing viewpoints on various different things. Crichton had a quote on the entire documentary that was released on the French Blu-ray, saying that basically him and McTiernan really didn't have any clashes or something like that, but it was after certain test screenings kind of head off to a certain degree where they got certain reactions where they really felt like they need to recraft the film and reshoot things to just kind of re-edit everything and just kind of splinter things off in different degrees here. And Omar Sharif, very acclaimed actor, Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, had very bad things to say about the entire production. He felt like it was saying it was kind of a shame to be involved with, just the quality of the production, how things went along in that regard. He just wasn't very appreciative of how it went down and felt like it was more of a paycheck movie, despite some of the actors on the entire film felt like he was so kind to them, so giving and stuff like that, but apparently just as things went on and how he looked back on it were not a very pleasant type of thing for him. And even in the casting process, there was a little bit of a friction here and there because for the main character of Bouvet, they originally wanted Stellan Skarsgård, but it was John McTiernan who wanted Vladimir Kulich, who was just a Nordic actor, and he was kind of new to Los Angeles and really didn't have a whole lot of things in his background, but McTiernan really liked him for the role. And everyone else was pushing for Skarsgård, but apparently, obviously, McTiernan got his way in that regard. So there's certain ideas that McTiernan kind of was pushing forward the entire thing. He had a very different perspective on certain things, in terms of like Ibn Fadlan being in the company of all these Nordic guys who are like these big, hulking, blonde-haired giants of a certain sort, and where he wanted to have someone that had much more comedic chops, and he wanted to have Michael Keaton, of all people, play the character of the Arab in the film, because he felt he was a very good comedic actor, and he could play the entire thing, and plus he's much more of a shorter stature actor. That got wiped out. They just would not go for it. There was some other things that, I guess, certain horror films that Keaton had done recently that were much more of a big ticket type of thing that really didn't perform quite so well, and they just didn't feel like he was a good fit for a big blockbuster type of film. And much more, somewhat appropriately, was Antonio Banderas getting the entire role, even though he's a Spanish actor, he's not an Arab. Splitting hairs in that regard, I think it just shifts it just a little bit closer as a guy with the proper complexion, even though he's not quite the same features, stuff like that. You're just inching a little bit towards something that's a little bit slightly more acceptable instead of putting maybe Keaton in brown face, browns him up or something like that, which would be a big no-no in that regard. But as things kind of fell into place where certain people had certain opinions that kind of locked in and certain other people didn't quite get their stuff locked in, it was a little bit of a give and take shell game type of things. Like some guys got this, some guys got that, some people didn't get their way on certain things. There was a little bit of a wrangling back and forth between McTiernan and the producers and the studio and stuff like that, going here and there and everywhere. And the big interesting type of thing is the fact that even after McTiernan's had all these blockbusters, he's a fantastic director, big stuff, a lot of money's brought in for different studios. Apparently Crichton had Final Cut. Now, as he had a lot of things that had been adapted from his own works, I'm certain he had certain contracts on various different films. But on this one, apparently that was a certain thing he had. So he had final say over whatever was going to be in the film final. So it was more of McTiernan having to try to convince Crichton of his own viewpoint and try to steer Crichton away from his viewpoint and stuff like that. So it's a very difficult type of thing. And the fact of the matter is they shot from June of 1997 to just the beginning of November 1997. So well over 100 days. shooting up in Vancouver and Victoria Island, and having all this stuff in very grueling conditions, very rainy, muddy, cold type of stuff going on, and certain injuries happened along the way where Antonio Banderas was like out for a week and numbed up on anesthesia and stuff like that when he had a bulging disc in his back after a stunt kind of went a little bit haywire. A lot of things went off in certain different degrees. But when they went off to do reshoots, it wasn't until a year after that, because apparently Antonio Banderas wasn't available for him because he was off doing other things. So that's why the film took almost 2 years from when they finished shooting it to when it actually got released in August 27th, 1999. And anyone who knows anything about box office knows that you're releasing something at the bare end of August, right before Labor Day in the US, you're not looking for a big take. You're kind of dumping it out in a real quiet point in time in the release calendar. And it was a lot of things where it just Touchstone Pictures, Disney, had a certain thing where they just kind of got sick of dealing with it. Because they're just like, the budget was originally supposed to be somewhere around $80 million. So pretty substantial stuff like that. They had a lot of people involved in the entire film. Fantastic cinematographer that McTiernan worked with on Die Hard with a Vengeance. A lot of effects people, a lot of stunt writers, a lot of things like that. A lot of people involved in the entire thing. So fairly costly film in that regard, but apparently they kind of blame McTiernan for going well over budget. Now things are a little bit fuzzy in terms of getting an exact number, but it seems like possibly including a lot of the marketing costs, it may have ballooned up to $160 million. And the film only returned about $60 million, period, at the box office. So it was not a successful film. Reviews were a little bit here and there. They weren't super glowing. They weren't terribly negative. They're a little bit kind of in the middle here. Some people liked it better than others. So it was a little... It wasn't getting a lot of traction in that regard. So it wasn't getting a lot of buzz overall for critics. And it really wasn't put in the best spot as a release date. And then put as much marketing muscle behind it as they possibly did for a lot of other things they're releasing at that point in time. And so just one of those things, like the entire thing went off in certain degrees where there's combat between McTiernan and Crichton in terms of ideas they want to explore, because apparently from Vladimir Kulich talked about in the interviews on the French Blu-ray that he felt like Crichton was much more literal about everything. He's not a guy who he wants to hear the dialogue tell the story. He wants it told to him instead of McTiernan, who knows the language of film, to show things, have the actors work a moment without having to speak dialogue. They can work things with their expressions, their body language, have the cinematography tell the story, bring a tone, bring an emotion out in that regard, even though McTiernan's kind of saying he was trying to make things a little bit stripped back and certain realistic and stuff like that, but felt a little combative in the interview exactly what he was intending to go for in an artistic way. But there is some absolutely gorgeous visuals throughout the course of the entire film that really just spark off the quality of the fire and the night and the hills and the mountains and the lakes and everything like that. It looks absolutely wonderful in so many different regards. And so just one of those things, like McTiernan knew so much how to craft film and use all the different tools to really tell the story overall. And Crichton was kind of narrowing it down to a much more simplistic type of story that really kind of pulled out a lot of different elements here. And even the studio wanted certain things removed from the entire film, such as a lot of the Arab stuff, a lot of the stuff with the culture of Ibn Fadlan, a lot of the different qualities of the original music that was put in the film, composed by Graham Revell, that would be completely replaced by a new score composed by Jerry Goldsmith, because Revell's score has a lot of those cues in there, has a lot of Arabic sounds and those instruments and those qualities and textures and flavors all over the place, which sound a little bit evocative of some of the stuff he did with the Crow soundtracks, the first two Crow films, which are two of my favorite scores of all time. He has a lot of those sort of tribal, Middle Eastern sounds swirling around in those entire scores there. So I felt a little bit kind of borrowing stuff that he'd done before and kind of planting it in here. That didn't sound like it was copy and pasting it, but just like stuff that was very familiar in the instrumentation and the orchestration he'd done before. But still a very good score, but so much in the large part listening to just a little bit of the Goldsmith score that's actually in the film. It's so damn good. It has so much more wealth of scope to it. It just feels so powerful in certain ways. Even the Graham Revell one is very good, and you can kind of find it here and there. It's probably up here on YouTube. You can probably find cues here and there. which is like, it's a good piece of work, but Goldsmith was a master. He's one of my favorite composers of all time. He's just master strokes over the place. So it's like listening to the Goldsmith thing, it makes me want to grab that freaking soundtrack and own it right away. The Ravel one is good work. It has more of those different sounds and those flavors, stuff like that peppered throughout the entire thing. But I think with Goldsmith having a certain other theme that I feel like works overall for like the Nordic type of people, I think that kind of works better to the entire thing, but I could still see the film working with either score. Now, as you go through the entire novel, there's a lot of different things with the novel versus the film. A lot of stuff with the novel starts out, one, in the film, they have this entire backstory for Ibn Fadlan. They was kind of this guy who had an affair with the king's wife, and he got banished from the kingdom for that. Well, that's not part of his life story. That's nowhere in the book. It does not exist. He's just an ambassador who goes off traveling, bringing the Islamic beliefs to other people in the world, and stuff like that. That's all it is in the entire novel. I don't know why they added this entire different backstory for him in the entire film, because apparently, from some accounts, if he had actually done that in real life, he probably would have been executed. So there's that. And the entire other interesting angle in the book versus the film, because McTiernan took a page out of The Hunt for October, where Ibn Fadlan actually ends up learning the Nordic language they have. As he goes through the entire sequence where he's kind of have this entire thing where he's watching all the guys over the fire and stuff like that, and kind of picking up the language and the syntax and stuff like that, kind of piecing it together over time. That's also not in the novel. And the entire time in the novel, he actually has someone translating everything for him, which is the character of Harrier, who actually knows Latin, and so he's able to translate in Latin over to Ibn Fadlan exactly what everyone else is saying around him, and let him understand what's happening. So that's just a bit of a thing for the film that makes it a little bit easier to kind of weave in, because if you have every single point in time in the entire film, someone else is translating for him, and he's got to translate off of this, it makes it too complicated for our film in that regard. With a novel, you can get away with it because you don't have to keep reiterating that and seeing that happen all over the place. It just becomes common knowledge in the written text, but when you're portraying on film, it just becomes very belabored in that regard. So I understand why they did that. But the particular thing in the novel that kind of created this sort of division between McTiernan and Crichton is the fact that the queen, the mother of the Wendell, is actually described in the novel as a very large, old woman that's kind of aged to the point where the features of gender have been almost completely indiscernible now. And McTiernan was trying to replicate that for the film itself. And apparently, Crichton had a completely different idea. They felt like, well, Bolvi going in there just hacking up an old woman, which just felt like it wasn't very heroic. It felt kind of beneath him and stuff like that. And so he decided, well, she should be like younger, slender, more beautiful. So almost rapturing to a certain distracting way for Bolvi to have this sort of alluring quality about her. And they were actually shooting both endings during the reshoots at the exact same time. McTiernan directing on one set and Crichton directing on the other one, and constantly telling everyone back and forth, don't tell the other one what we're doing over here. And apparently it was Crichton who got very close with Vladimir Coolidge, who told him, don't worry about what they're doing over there because I have final cut. And another change made from the novel to the film is the fact that when they go to talk to the old woman who has some sort of insight into the lore of the Wendells, she tells them they have to go kill the mother, but also there's a horned leader of them that you also have to kill to disperse them. Well, that's not in the novel, and McTiernan wanted to stay close to the novel, but they kind of like inserted this entire thing into the film as sort of a climax point for Bulve, which kind of works. I think it could be a little bit stronger of a beat in that regard, because in the novel he does get stabbed by the mother. He has a sort of poison and whatnot kind of working its way through his system, kind of regains some of his strength, but kind of goes pale overnight. But when the attack comes, he comes back out and does the exact same thing. He's walking back out there with as much strength as he can muster and kind of goes to war or whatnot with the Wendell, but there's never that definitive sort of climax point of like this exact action ends the conflict, dissolves everything, because McTiernan had a weird type of idea here where he was kind of building off the film Zulu, where like at a certain point in time, after all this carnage is going down and so many people have been slain, at a certain point the Wendell kind of go and disperse themselves out to like the mountaintop or hillside or something else like that, and they started this chant that was done in the caves, and it's Ibn Fadlan who interprets it as like they're not taunting you, they're saluting you. And wanted to have this certain moment there, but that got struck down. So again, there's a lot of ideas that are kind of at play. People wanted to inject certain things, maybe stay a little bit closer to the novel, but then Crichton kind of wants to go off and remix certain things or kind of change things here and there. And so that was just kind of shaded things to such a degree. It's like things are just not going very well here. We got two creative forces combating against one another, and just like this is not going exactly the way everyone wanted to go. Reading off from the script, shooting what they thought they were shooting, and certain things just got a lot chopped out of the entire thing, where there's certain ideas and certain beats, the entire story here, they got pulled out. Coolidge even felt like there was a lot of things where like we never really got to know a lot of the warriors before the first battle, where a lot of them get killed. You never really get a moment to really kind of explore them, kind of get introduced properly to them, to have a couple moments here and there that just get attached to them, to have a certain emotional impact when they get killed early on in the story here. So it felt like there was suggested certain things about having a little thing on when they're traveling along on the boat that just go about a couple of seconds here and there for each guy, with a camera just swooping around the entire boat. Just give them a little bit of an introduction here and there so we can at least identify each one and have a little bit of a distinctive quality for each one of them. And they just didn't go about that. So there's certain things that Coolidge felt like we had something that was felt like it was very, very good. And it just got a little bit lost in this combative battle between the two different main creative forces in the entire film here. And so as things went along, McTiernan's ideas kind of got pushed aside, they're kind of minimized, and Crichton's stuff went out because, like I said, he's the one who has final say on everything, and there was no premiere for the entire film. Touchstone didn't do a whole lot for it in terms of that regard. I certainly saw it in the theater. I've always enjoyed it very much. I watched it in the theater. I gave it a very good review on my old Forever Horror website, and watching it again for this video, it's a good film. It's still a very good film. I very much enjoyed it. I thought a lot of the characters were very good. McTiernan can direct like hell. The film looks fantastic. The Goldsmith score is wonderful. I thought the story came off very, very well. But moving on from there, it's like, okay, the film gets released. Not a lot of fanfare. Decent reviews. Not enough box office to balance out the entire cost of the entire film. It gets out on VHS, gets out on DVD. It's way too late in the cycle for it to get a Laserdisc release. Not even in Japan did it get one, so that's pretty much where it landed. That's basically all it was on physical media, at least in North America. That's it. That's all we've had. Now there have been 2 Blu-ray releases overseas. One was in Germany from Concord Video. They did one in 2009 and reissued in 2015, but it's on a BD25. It's got like a couple old featurettes, like EPK featurettes, a couple archival interviews. Not a whole lot to talk about. It's still the same master from the DVD, but it's the one from France from Metropolitan Video. That's the one that's coveted. It's been out of print for almost a decade now. It was released in 2011, and it features a remastered version of the film. Brand new transfer, which has not been seen anywhere outside of this release. The version you'll find on streaming, on VOD, is an HD version of the old DVD master. It's the exact same colors, the exact same compositions, exact same framing, all that type of stuff. There's nothing really different about it, and so it's still poured over from a 1999 DVD master. What the Blu-ray in France did again was that, and as I've alluded to, they got brand new interviews from a lot of different people. Antonio Banderas, Velmer Coolidge, John McTiernan, a couple of people in the entire film in terms of production and cinematography, and one of the co-writers of the entire film. All these people kind of contribute a little bit of something here and there to this 50-minute documentary, and plus there's additional featurettes, another interview with John McTiernan about various sort of things, plus all those archival things from the one in Germany, and it's on a BD50, and so it's got a better bit rate, it's can compact all this type of stuff, and it was a limited edition, which had a 40-page collector's book in it, and did get reissued in 2014 without the booklet, but you ain't find it nowhere. It's all out of print. You can't find it anywhere unless you're going to pay a lot of money for it in the very few places you might be able to find anyone selling a copy. Now, there's certainly a lot of people out there who do have copies, but they're not getting rid of them. And that's the big type of thing with the 13th Warrior here, is that they just don't want to do anything with it anymore. There's just nothing out there. There's no North American Region 1, Region A release at all. There's no Blu-ray release in the United States. There's nothing in print right now, period. Nothing. The DVD's out of print. You can't get that. You can get everything, like I said, up on VOD, but still the same old masters that's been around for 25 years, which is egregious considering there is a remastered version out there, which does have some different colors here and there, but they might be more faithful to the original thing. There's certain things when they're in the caves going to find the mother of the Wendels, where a lot of the fire stuff does look a lot more vibrant, looks a lot better in that regard from the stills available on Capsaholic that I'm showing here. And so there's certain things in it just probably looks more filmic, probably has more detail, has more different qualities about it that would look a lot better. But if you don't actually have that Blu-ray in your collection right now, you're probably never going to see that transfer. So, very difficult type of thing. That's the main thing I've been kind of wanting to do this video about, because I've known about this entire release for years now. And I could just never quite get all the resources I needed to really kind of talk about in a video properly and highlight the fact that this thing had a very extensive release that covered a lot of ground in the entire production, entire thing, why certain things went off in certain directions, why the thing got delayed, why it probably didn't go off very well, why Touchstone didn't put a lot of faith behind it in terms of marketing and stuff like that. All these different things, a lot of stuff behind the scenes of this whole thing is very, very interesting here that I just wanted to pinpoint here, but the fact of the matter is, all I can use is old DVD on the whole thing. And it just feels like there's something more to pinpoint the fact that there's probably a work print out there somewhere that has McTiernan's version on it. It might not be the most finesse version, but it would have the full Grammar score on the whole thing. It would have a lot of things put together in that regard, because it did put it in front of test screening audiences. So there is a exhibition print out there somewhere, probably, maybe, that they could probably put together if they really had an interest in the whole thing. And Disney, as they are, they're a little bit kind of dodgy on the entire physical media front. They've closed down operations in certain countries around the world. They've kind of made a deal with Sony to have them handle a lot of their physical media distribution now. So they're kind of have part of a hand in saying what is going to get released, but with everything in the Touchstone catalog, the Disney catalog, the Hollywood Pictures catalog, the 20th Century Fox catalog, this is probably buried way, way down. It would seem more like something a boutique label would probably pick up and have much more interest in. Now, Disney has done some licensing out to like Mill Creek and Kino Lorber, stuff like Via Warshawski, Deep Rising, The Puppet Masters, a couple of things are done in like the Hollywood Pictures Library that they've kind of put out, given out to some places here and there, but not allow them to do any remasters. I know that when the Deep Rising special edition was announced for Kino Lorber, it was originally announced as being from a 4K restoration, but that was kind of quietly taken out of the press release and kind of like buried in the whole thing. It's like, no, we're not going to be doing that anymore. So it was basically the same master that was stirring around, but at least Kino Lorber put a lot of effort into getting a lot of new interviews on stuff like that. So it's not outside the realm of possibility. It's one of those things like The 13th Warrior, like I said, I think it's a really good film. I think it works very, very well. I think Banderas, Coolidge, a lot of the actors in their film are very, very good. For 25 years, I have enjoyed this film. I haven't had a dip in quality of what I think about the film at all. When I saw it on opening weekend in '99, I liked it very much. And now, 2024, I still like it. Still think it's a really good film. So I just think it's a film that deserves better than it has gotten on home video. And though, like I said, you can grab it on VOD and stuff like that, I just feel like it deserves a definite presence. Bring that remastered version out to the wider audience and stuff like that. Banderas, even he got praise from Martin Campbell. When he went off and did The Legend of Zorro a couple years after this, Martin Campbell said, that's a really good film. You should look online. There's a cult following for this film. This is only like 4 years or so after the release of the film. It's saying you should go online and look at all this stuff. There's a lot of people talking about this entire film. He thought it was a really good film, and Martin Campbell has done some really good films himself. There was the entire 50-minute documentary uploaded by another channel here on YouTube that I will link below. Hopefully it stays up for a long time. You go off and watch the entire thing, all the interviews and stuff like that. So that was very much a helpful cog in me actually making sure I could get this done to have that resource, because before, some people posted just like sporadic little clips for the entire thing overall and some of the other featurettes that just didn't form a cohesive story could follow exactly what happened in the entire film here. So very much like to hear what you guys feel about The 13th Warrior. If you've gone through the book, let me know how you felt about the book versus the film, because Again, like I said, I thought the audiobook was very, very good. I think it's well worth checking out, whether it is the text itself or the audiobook. Like I said, the narrator is spectacularly well done. Gorgeous type of stuff from him. Simon Vance, beautiful voice, beautiful encapsulation of the character and personality, entire story here. Wonderful stuff. So guys, thanks so much for watching the entire video here. You can always post comments below, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't. There's a super things feature you want to contribute something to the channel directly, or the Patreon to get a little early access to everything every single month. So guys, thanks so much for checking things out. Take care. Bye-bye.